January 13, 2026. Based on major international developments dominating coverage across sources like BBC, Reuters, CNN, Al Jazeera, The Guardian, and others. The dominant story is the escalating crisis in Iran amid massive anti-government protests, coupled with U.S. responses under President Trump. 1. Iran's foreign minister warns country is ready for war as Trump weighs military options. Tehran says it is open to dialogue, but prepared to defend itself if tested, following deadly crackdown on protests. 2. Trump imposes 25% tariff on countries doing business with Iran, U.S. President announces immediate penalties on nations trading with Tehran amid response to protests. Suppression. 3. Death toll rises in Iran's nationwide protests, with reports of hundreds killed. Eyewitness accounts describe brutal security force attacks, overflowing morgues, and near total internet blackout. 4. Trump briefed on military and covert options against Iran. Prefers diplomacy first. White House explores strikes, but emphasizes negotiation. Sources indicate contact with Iranian opposition. Iran faces biggest challenge to regime since 1979 revolution. Analysts highlight ferocious crackdown and communication shutdown as regime confronts widespread dissent. 6. Trump to meet Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado at White House. Nobel Peace Prize winner 2025 set forward talks, follows U.S. actions in Venezuela including Maduro-related developments. 7. Europe scrambles over Trump's threats to take control of Greenland, Denmark. And EU allies reject U.S. claims, described as ludicrous by some, raising NATO tensions. 8. Russia launches major missile and drone strikes on Ukraine, including Kyiv. In Kharkiv, deadly attacks kill civilians. U.S. condemns dangerous escalation in ongoing war. 9. Israeli forces kill senior Hamas police chief. And others in Gaza, quadcopter strike in Khan Yunis, ongoing demolitions. And security operations reported post-ceasefire. 10. Trump administration revokes over 100 zero visas since return to office, part of broader immigration enforcement push, sparking lawsuits from states like Minnesota and Illinois. 11. Pope Leo XIV meets Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado. Vatican engagement amid regional tensions and U.S. involvement in Venezuela. 12. China and EU reach deal on steps to resolve EV import dispute. Agreement aims to ease trade tensions over electric vehicles. 13. Sudan redeploys army to retake key regions from RSF. Efforts to reclaim Kordofan. And Darfur amid protracted humanitarian crisis. 14. G7 and allies discuss reducing dependence on Chinese rare earth. U.S. pushes for supply chain resiliency in critical minerals. 15. Australian Writers' Festival cancelled after Palestinian author axed. Event boss resigns amid controversy over author exclusion. These reflect the most prominent breaking international stories right now, with heavy focus on Middle East tensions, U.S. foreign policy moves, and ongoing conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza. News is fast-moving, especially on Iran. Check reliable sources for live updates. Breaking news. Death toll rises in Iran's nationwide protests with reports of hundreds killed. Brutal crackdown and overflowing morgues by Juba Global News Network. Juba, GOM. Tehran, Iran, January 13, 2026. Iran's escalating nationwide protests, now in their third week, have descended into one of the bloodiest episodes of civil unrest since Tayyip, the 1979 Islamic Revolution, with human rights organizations and eyewitness accounts reporting hundreds and potentially thousands of deaths at the hands of security forces, a near total internet and communications blackout imposed since January 8th has severely hampered independent verification, but smuggled videos, hospital reports, and exile-based monitoring groups paint a harrowing picture of mass casualties, overflowing morgues and hospitals in crisis. The demonstrations, which began on December 28, 2025, initially focused on economic grievances, hyperinflation, a collapsing real, fuel, and food shortages and widespread poverty, quickly transformed into explicit calls for regime change. Protesters across all 31 provinces have chanted "Death to the dictator," waved pre-revolutionary lion and sun flags, and demanded the ouster of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and an end to clerical rule. What started as sporadic bazaar strikes and street marches has grown into sustained nightly confrontations in major cities including Tehran, Isfahan, Mashhad, Shiraz, Tabriz, and Kermanshah. Security forces, primarily the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, besieged militia, and regular police have responded with lethal force, live ammunition, shotgun pellets fired at close range, tear gas, beatings, and mass arrests. Report describes snipers targeting crowds from rooftops, indiscriminate shooting into gatherings, and raids on hospitals to detain the wounded. Eyewitnesses in Tehran have spoken of seeing hundreds of bodies in streets and makeshift morgues, with videos showing rows of body bags lined up outside facilities like Harizik Forensic Center and hospitals in southern districts. Casualty figures vary widely due to the blackout, but credible estimates indicate a staggering toll. The U.S.-based human rights activist news agency, Atrana, has documented at least 572 deaths, 503 protesters, and 69 security personnel, and over 10,600 arrests as of mid-January, with many more under investigation. Norway-based Iran Human Rights confirmed 648 fatalities, including 9 minors, warning that the true number could exceed 60 based on hospital reports excluding direct-to-morgue cases. Exile media like Iran International cited sources close to regime insiders estimating at least 20 killed in a 48-hour period around January 8-10 alone, with some multi-source investigations pushing totals toward 12 in what has been termed the largest massacre in modern Iranian history. Medical professionals describe scenes of chaos, hospitals overwhelmed with gunshot wounds to the head, chest, and eyes, shortages of surgeons, blood, and beds, and morgues unable to handle the influx. In Tehran, videos show grieving families searching among black body bags, while in Shiraz and other cities, facilities have suspended non-emergency care. Doctors report being threatened against treating protesters or documenting injuries. One Tehran physician told international media that bodies were piling up outside hospitals, with pickup trucks transporting them to overflow warehouses adjacent to morgues. Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have condemned the renewed cycle of protest, bloodshed, verifying unlawful killings, including of children and bystanders between late December and early January. They documented at least 28 deaths in that early period alone, with security forces using excessive force against largely peaceful crowds. Supreme Leader Khamenei has escalated rhetoric, declaring an end to tolerance and labeling demonstrators rooters who must be suppressed decisively. Judiciary officials warned of charges carrying the death penalty, including muharabah, enmity against God, and state media has broadcast forced confessions. The nationwide internet blackout, confirmed by monitoring groups like NetBlocks as one of the most severe in Iran's history, has cut off global connectivity since January 8, limiting protesters' ability to organize, share evidence, or seek help. Phone services, including landlines and mobile calls, have also been disrupted in many areas. Rights advocates describe the shutdown as a deliberate tactic to conceal atrocities and prevent international scrutiny, echoing patterns from past crackdowns like 2019's Bloody November. Some protesters have bypassed restrictions via satellite services like Starlink to send out footage. The regime has acknowledged some security force deaths, around 100 claimed in state reports, and blamed Reuters, terrorists, and foreign instigators, including implicit accusations against the U.S. and Israel for the violence. Pro-government rallies have been organized in Tehran and elsewhere to project control and national unity. International condemnation has mounted, with the UN Human Rights Chief expressing horror at the violence, European nations calling for restraint, and the European Parliament barring Iranian diplomats. U.S. President Donald Trump has warned of intervention if killings continue, stating the military is locked and loaded, while Iranian officials insist they are prepared for any scenario. As the blackout persists and protests continue despite repression, often at night to evade heavier deployments, the human cost amounts. Smuggled accounts describe families unable to locate loved ones, mass detentions, and a growing sense of desperation among demonstrators who see no path back. The regime faces its gravest internal threat in decades, but the blackout obscures whether the crackdown is breaking the movement or fueling greater resolve. With diplomacy faltering and escalation risks rising, the coming days could prove decisive. The voices of those in the streets, muffled by darkness, demand the world listen. Thanks for watching Juba Global News Network, and I am John. Next is Jasmine reporting. Jasmine, tell us about his tariffs up.
Thank you, John. Trump imposes sweeping 25% tariffs on nations trading with Iran amid deadly protest. Crackdown by Juba Global News Network, JubaGlobal.com, Washington, D.C. January 13, 2026, in a bold escalation of economic pressure on the Islamic Republic of Iran, U.S. President Donald Trump announced on January 12 that any country conducting business with Tehran will immediately face a 25% tariff on all trade with the United States. The move, declared via a post on Truth Social, comes as Iran grapples with its most widespread and deadly anti-government protests in decades, with security forces accused of killing hundreds of demonstrators and imposing a near-total communications blackout. Effective immediately, any country doing business with the Islamic Republic of Iran will pay a tariff of 25% on any and all business being done with the United States of America, Trump wrote. This order is final and conclusive. Thank you for your attention to this matter. The announcement lacks detailed implementation guidelines, official White House documentation, or clarification on the legal basis, potentially relying on the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, AIEEPA, which Trump has used for previous broad tariffs. No exemptions or thresholds for doing business were specified, leaving open questions about whether the tariffs target only goods, services, or specific sectors like oil. The White House has not elaborated, and administration officials declined immediate comment. This tariff policy directly targets Iran's key trading partners, who have helped the regime circumvent long-standing U.S. sanctions. China remains Iran's largest partner, purchasing the bulk of its oil, often through intermediaries, and shadow fleets accounting for an estimated 90% fixes or top-up or more of Tehran's petroleum exports in recent years. Other major traders include India, the United Arab Emirates, UAE, Turkey, Iraq, and to a lesser extent, Russia and Brazil. Combined, these nations facilitate billions in annual trade with Iran, providing critical revenue amid economic collapse driven by inflation, currency devaluation, and resource mismanagement. Analysts warn the tariffs could severely disrupt global supply chains. For China, already navigating fragile post-trade war relations with the U.S., the measure risks reigniting tensions. Beijing's embassy in Washington swiftly condemned the move, stating that tariff wars and trade wars have no winners and vowing to protect its interests. India, which doubled down on Russian oil purchases earlier in 2025 despite U.S. pressure, faces renewed scrutiny. Trump previously imposed 50% duties on Indian goods over similar issues. The UAE, a key U.S. ally hosting American military assets, could see complications in its balancing act between Washington and Tehran. The tariffs arrive against the backdrop of Iran's intensifying domestic crisis. Protests erupted in late December 2025, initially over skyrocketing food and fuel prices, water shortages, and economic despair. They quickly morphed into calls for regime change, with demonstrators chanting against Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and burning symbols of the Islamic Republic. Human rights groups report grim figures. The U.S.-based human rights activist news agency HRNA has verified at least 572 deaths, including protesters and security forces, and over 10,600 arrests. Norway-based Iran Human Rights estimates 648 fatalities, including children, with some sources suggesting the true toll could be far higher due to the internet shutdown that began January 8. Security forces, including the IRGC and Basij militia, have deployed live ammunition, tear gas, and mass detentions. Reports describe hospitals overwhelmed, morgues overflowing, and doctors threatened against treating injured protesters. Supreme Leader Khamenei has ended any notion of restraint, labeling demonstrators ruiners who must be suppressed decisively. Trump's tariff announcement follows days of escalating rhetoric. He has warned Iran against further killings, stating the U.S. is locked and loaded and prepared to intervene militarily if necessary. Briefings to the president have included options for targeted airstrikes, cyber operations, and support for protesters. On January 11, Trump revealed Iranian officials contacted him about negotiations, but cautioned that ongoing violence might force action first. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt emphasized diplomacy as the priority while affirming Trump's readiness to use force. The economic measure serves as an immediate, non-military tool to isolate Iran further. By penalizing third-party trade, it aims to choke off revenue streams that sustain the regime's proxy activities and domestic repression. Iran's economy, already battered by sanctions, faces worsened shortages. Food comprises a large portion of imports, and further restrictions could exacerbate hardship for ordinary citizens. International reactions have been swift and varied. European allies have condemned the protest crackdown but expressed concern over unilateral U.S. tariffs that could affect transatlantic trade. Russia and China, both with stakes in Iran, have offered implicit support to Tehran while criticizing Washington's approach. Israel's government, viewing any weakening of the Iranian regime favorably, has remained largely silent on the tariffs but maintains high alert amid regional tensions. Critics argue the policy risks backfiring. It could rally nationalist sentiment in Iran, strain relations with key partners like India and the UAE, and provoke retaliatory measures from China. Legal challenges loom as the U.S. Supreme Court weighs cases questioning the breadth of Trump's tariff authority under IE. As protests persist despite repression, and Trump weighs next steps including potential meetings with Iranian opposition figures, the 25% tariff stands as a clear signal the U.S. will use economic leverage aggressively to pressure Tehran, whether it hastens regime change, forces concessions. And for watching Juba, Global News Network delivers independent coverage of global events, or sparks broader confrontation, remains uncertain in this volatile moment for the Middle East. Stay informed with updates at jubaglobal.com. And I am Jasmine, and you can also call me Brooke. Please share and follow us. Back to you, John.